Gary, get your mic, please.
He had been, was he a superintendent at Oberlin or something? Where was he?
Yeah, he was at Oberlin, then he went to China.
Oh, that's different.
He did some kind of internship in China, and then
You want me to
That's interesting.
put
Today I
that as
met
an
someone who
agenda
was in the
modification
circus
to
and
add?
spent 5 years in China.
Yeah, probably, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we
She's
probably
one of
should
my
just,
client's friends. She's visiting.
clarify it,
Well,
because
she's with the, well, she's not
I
visiting.
think we
She's
just have that
performing in the Barnum and Bailey
resolution,
Circus.
or not the resolution, but the
She's staying.
policy.
who's on the board now, and
The policy, yeah,
I told
Yeah,
him, and I
that's
said,
it. So, yeah, please.
ESC Board Leadership Series.
I saw him somewhere at one of the things one time. He might have been down in Columbus when we were there.
probably OSBA,
Yeah, I saw him once, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I gotta be on. Thank you.
We're good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, everybody ready to go? Good evening. It is Wednesday, October 4th, 2023 at 6 PM, and we are convening a regular meeting of the Cuyahoga Heights Schools Board of Education in the Bonneray Media Center. Mr. Muccio, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Decker.
Here.
Mrs. Etter.
Here.
Mr. Suchaki.
Here.
Ms. Prouse.
Here.
Mr. Dobbins.
Here, 5 present, none absent. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public comments portion of this meeting. Please identify yourself on the board sign-in sheet. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available for review on our school district's website. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting, and let's now recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So may I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Ms. Decker moves, I'll second. Mr. Evans, Mr. Muccio, or others, are there any additions or changes?
Nope.
I would like to add one item to the agenda under the board section.
Okay.
I assume we all got emails about the ESC Board Leadership Series coming up. And I think, just to make it easier, what if we just put an item on there to approve attendance at any of those at our own discretion? Would that be all right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we'd have to, every time one comes up, if somebody wants to go,
Sure.
we have to have a motion.
Yeah, and I think you said there's a session coming up soon?
Yeah, there's one
Right.
coming up next week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just a
okay.
motion to allow, or any Board of Education members that wish to attend the Leadership Series at the Educational Service Center to do so.
To do so, yep, that sounds
And
good.
just to add more to the point, and by doing so, if the board approves it, that would make it a compensable attendance or meeting, so.
Right.
Okay, if there's no other suggestions for changes or edits to the agenda, let's move to a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye.
Ms. Prouse.
Motion passes 5-0. Item number 3, I am going to make a motion to discuss the annual audit in accordance with ORC Section 121.22D2. And may I have a motion, have a second to the motion so that we can adjourn to executive session?
Second.
Second, Mr. Suchaki, any discussion? Okay, let's move to a roll call vote.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Ms. Prouse.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 at 6:02 PM, and we are adjourning to executive session.
the state officials do presentations for principals and teachers and curriculum directors. We had asked that they make the data more actionable so that school districts can actually use it to implement different professional development initiatives or to have a greater impact in classrooms. So it's nice to know that you're part of an organization like BASA. At least the former Ohio Department of Education listened. Certainly can't speak to what the new one's going to be. So in board docs for everybody in the public, they can click on that attachment. You all have a copy of it. You actually have two documents in front of you. One is the report card summary, a very nice booklet of a lot of the information that I have here. You'll see some of the information that Mr. Martin presented on the other night when we did the Q&A for the levy. So that's a nice comprehensive report that had a lot of help in making it more user-friendly as well, taking out some of the high-end technical jargon. So tonight what we want to do is emphasize the many highlights that we have on the report card, and of course there's going to be growth opportunities, and we'll talk about those. We're going to break down each component very briefly. I don't want to spend a 2-hour presentation. I'd like to have this done in 30 minutes or less so that we can move on with our night. We want to look at the comparisons to surrounding school districts, just as I did last year. Created comparisons with school districts who directly touch Cuyahoga Heights, and then a couple other school districts of interest that are of similar size or of interest to people in the community. I also want to, as I go through this, demonstrate how to navigate the system, just so you can go in and see there's so much more information than I can possibly present tonight. Some wonderful reports, even those that would interest Mr. Muccio over there on the financial side. So I want to take some time to do that. So first question is how do I find my district and my school's report card, and what resources are available? I've shared this presentation with you, so you can actually click these live links on your own time. But if you're in the general public, you simply have to open up your browser of choice, and you just type Ohio State Report Card, not Buckeyes, Mr. Evans, Ohio State Report Cards, and click enter, and it's the very first link that you come to. Obviously, I could have done that here in the presentation, but that doesn't help people who may be listening. You come to this main page, and you simply go to the search bar, and you type Cuyahoga, and you'll see Falls is the first to show up, so you need to go a little farther, Heights. And you've got the local, the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school. And you can select the report card du jour there. Up here, you're going to see this called a hamburger icon up here. It's a live link. When you click on this, I use this a lot. This is where I do a lot of my analysis, okay? You, for example, download data. You can go all the way back to 2005, 2006 to locate different data, whether it's on buildings or districts or community schools, because only public school districts and community schools have, and career technical centers have report cards. Your non-pubs and your charters do not have a state report card. So they don't have anywhere near the accountability that we have. And you're going to see so many more reports in here than you can imagine, but this is where I go to look at district level data, building level data. I go to look at specific subgroups within here. So, my spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that interests me, if I click a little farther down here, I can look at individual things like the K through 3 literacy. I can look at the graduation rates. I can look at things very individually, but I try to look at the overall data. And that's what fed into this document. So if anybody questions where did I get the rankings and things like that, it's under one of these district reports. And for me, it was, I can't find it here right off the top of my head because there's too many spreadsheets. But this is where you would go to do advanced reports. Yes?
Question. There's, as you said, there's just years and years of very comprehensive data. Is this data, does it derive from this so-called EMIS reporting that we've heard so much about?
Absolutely.
So does that mean then that non-publics don't have an EMIS reporting requirement, nor an EMIS coordinator?
Not to the degree we do, no. And almost every bit of data that you see on the state report card comes through EMIS.
Okay.
And we start, actually, the first reporting starts, it's actually started, like the district calendar has been uploaded. So we know when the first day of school is, the last day of school, so that they can start counting the number of hours that we're in session. In October, we'll do the student upload as well as the staff upload, and that's when I'll start working with Mrs. Rodriguez in the Treasurer's Department and Mrs. Dietzel to make sure that our FTEs, our full-time equivalent employees on the teaching staff and administrative staff are as accurate as possible. And that's when we really start verifying next year's report card. Starts in October and only intensifies as we get towards the summer months. So this is where you go to find all of those things. You can also look at advanced reports. This is really my favorite addition that the state has added, is under the advanced reports. If you go under public data and go down to the district or school dashboard, so this is data that's readily available to the public. You can type in any school district or community school in Ohio, and I'm going to obviously do Cuyahoga Heights because right now this says all, and we don't want all. Give it a second here to load. Looking forward to the new technology upgrades back there, Mr. Moore, because spinning and spinning and spinning. This, once it loads, you'll be able to see the ESSER funds. You can look at the ESSER funding of every school district in Ohio, the KRA, the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, early literacy, enrollment data, absenteeism, test results, proficiency levels, and then the 4- and 5-year graduation rates. It puts it all here in one spot to go in, and you can do really quick comparisons. Obviously, this isn't loading, so I'm going to move on. I can demonstrate that at some other point. And then you've got resources, and this is where I go to read all the technical documents. So when I'm going in and verifying the data, if I see a discrepancy, I have to dive into one of these technical documents to say, why is there a discrepancy? Why is the student not showing up in the test results? And there are documents that I can pull from here where kids count, which means how do we know that a kid should or shouldn't show up in your data? How do we know it shows up for the district and not the school building? So all of those documents are here, and this is how I go through and formally do an internal audit, so to speak, of the testing data, the enrollment data, anything that I can try to go in and verify. Okay. All right, so those are some of those resources for you. Let's go back to the slideshow. So what does the state report card measure? Right now it measures five components: achievement, progress, gap closing, early literacy, and graduation. We'll talk about all those in great detail. In 24-25, it's anticipated that we will have the college, career, workforce, and military readiness component. Right now it's a report only. It's starting to populate really good data. If you click this link, it'll take you to, or if you go through the other way, Cuyahoga Heights local school district. This is where you see our overall rating, and you can see the number of stars for each of those individual components. Now, not all components are created equally. And we'll get to that here in a second. Here's some statewide results, all right? And just as you already know, we are a 5-star school district, as are all 3 of our buildings. Tonight, this is the district report card presentation, not the individual buildings, so we're going to talk about the district overall. This is a breakdown. You can see 90% or more of the school districts in Ohio are at least 3 stars. 90%. And Mr. Evans will tell you that means that some law is going to change because we're not allowed to overachieve in the state of Ohio. Some law will change that will knock more districts down. That typically is what happens. Not to be pessimistic, but we've seen this show before. Yeah, we've been around long enough. But you can see of the school districts, 12.4% of all school districts in Ohio were 5 stars. We're one of the 12.4. Only 11% of buildings in Ohio were 5 stars, and we have 3. So Cuyahoga Heights lives on the far right of the graph, not politically. When I say far right, I'm not trying to imply anything. It's we live on the far right side of this particular graph.
3 like an A?
So a 3,
They purposely did away with that because they.
Yeah.
I know, but
Yeah.
I just mean like is 3
3 is.
good and we are
So
overachievers,
what?
or, like,
Yeah. So let's. I can jump ahead to that, and we'll come back to it. But a 3 means you met the expectations. So it means you met your potential, so to speak. You scored as you were supposed to score based on the metrics that have been set up for you. When you are a 4, you exceed. And when you're a 5, there's evidence that you have significantly exceeded. You really outperformed the expectations. And I think that's significant. It's a great question to ask. So here are the actual numbers. We've got the districts on top. You got the schools on the bottom, exactly how many. Okay?
These are total, or these reflect to
Total.
us?
So there were 95. This is breaking it down. So you see, and we're going to go into these, like achievement. 95 school districts in Ohio got 5 stars in achievement. We were one of those. 450 schools. There's 3,372 schools in Ohio. 450 got 5 stars in achievement. We have 3 of those. Progress, and we'll talk about that more. 71 districts in Ohio got 5 stars. We were one of those. All right, gap closing. We were one of those that got 5 stars of the 273. Graduation at 38.8. We were one of the 5 stars. All right, and that's true. We're applicable to all of our schools. The only place where we're not 5 stars is early literacy, and we're at 3 stars, which means we met expectation. And we've talked about the initiatives that we are implementing that started last year that we expect to start to shake out, because kids have to get to 3rd grade before it starts to register. There's also some things with reading and improvement monitoring plans, and whether kids are able to move off of those once they're on them. And we'll talk about that, okay? So the overall rating, we talked about 5 things feeding into it. Right now, this is the weighting. So achievement, how many questions did you get right? And progress, did you meet your potential? That's the easiest way to explain those. Are each weighted at almost 30% each, and then around 14% for the other 3 components right now. Okay, so not everything is weighted equally, but there are some things weighted equal to one another.
do they change the weights?
Those weights change only, so when they add the 5th component, the 6th component will be equal to graduation rate, gap closing, and early literacy.
Okay.
Okay? The rule is this, is that achievement and progress must be equal, and gap closing must be exactly 1/2 of whatever those 2 are equal to, and then all the others have to equal that one as well. That would be a fun algebra 1 math problem to calculate. It's fantastic. So they do change because some districts, you're always comparing us to Put in Bay or somebody like that.
Kelly's Island, yeah.
Kelly's Island, they may not register they won't register an early literacy potentially. Because you have to have 15 kids in order to register a number. And so they may not have enough kids in a population to register something. And so the weighting changes for that school district based on whether you have them or not. So it's worth noting the school district ranked 29 in the state of Ohio out of 607 school districts overall, 29. That's the top approximately 4.8%. The high school was the number 9th high school in Ohio. Middle school was number 3.
That's amazing.
There are approximately 820, between 850 and 820 high schools in Ohio. Middle schools, it's harder to determine because you've got junior highs and you got middle schools, and some middle schools are 6 through 8, some are 5 through 8. So it's really hard to say definitively this is an elementary school or a middle school. But when you're at the top, most of them say elementary school, elementary school, elementary school. Number 50 is where elementary school ranked. And I think in the first, the packet, the document I gave you, on the first page, I think I went as far as saying not only is this where they ranked as an individual school based on what type of school they are, but you can see where they ranked out of 3,372 schools. So it's pretty incredible. Like our middle school is the top 0.56% of all buildings in the state of Ohio based on how they did on last year's report card. Like, it's pretty incredible when you look at that. Here's how we did comparatively. Kirtland, a little higher than us this year in the overall, all right, but still within the range there. And then the gap really starts to close. Like you can see in the overall rating, for example, Independence is number 218, all the way down to Garfield Heights being 576 out of 607. That's actually an improvement. Garfield Heights showed some improvements this year, and I'm happy for that school district, but it's not in the same bracket as where we're competing right now. So something to really be proud of. Achievement,
Excuse me.
Yes.
That last
Mhm.
graphic or data there
Yeah.
is something I think we should hold on to reference.
Yeah, I did this last year. If you reference last year's presentation, I've done it this year. And the reason why I did that is simply, looking at the future. If a school district like Cuyahoga Heights ceases to exist because of whatever factor you want to talk about, these are the school districts where your kids will go to school,
That's my point.
and
Like,
this is how they are performing.
so like when we want to show people the achievement or the excellence that occurs here, we can go to this graphic for comparison to other school districts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And noting that, look at the really gap between 2 and 3, like that's a big gap.
It is.
And
it
then
is.
from like Fairview to Independence, that's another big gap.
Well, these two school districts I can see right from the windows where we're sitting right now. So, I mean, and they're the bottom two. We can see Cleveland down the street, and again, no offense to Cleveland.
But yeah, I mean,
I'm happy for them. They had improvements this year as well, and I'm really happy when school districts, and in fact, almost all of these districts showed improvements from where they were last year. So that's something we have to consider here, is that if we want to continue to be at the top, we have to continue to evolve. We can't always rely upon the same exact thing year after year. We always have to look at, are we really maximizing our talents and what our kids are capable of doing? So achievement. So achievement is how many questions did you get right on a test? That's the simplest way of saying it. If there's 100 questions, what was your score out of 100? And so there's data here that is that feeds into that. And this, I painstakingly go through and verify this data. And this is what gets us what's called a performance index. And our performance index is 100% what feeds into the ranking, okay? What the state does is it takes the top 2% of all performance indices, and does an average. And so of the top 2%, the average, which is listed right here, was 108.8. Our performance index was 102.5. The year before it was 100.9, so we really jumped. It was fantastic. So we have 94.2% of the maximum value. And then based on your percentage, that lets you know if you've got 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, and I'll show you that. Out here to the side, these are the individual tests. This is report only. This used to be 25% of the weighting for this overall achievement mark, but it's no longer part of that. But there are some nice things that you can look here, like Mr. Martin was talking the other night about how do we do compared to similar school districts. This shows you Cuyahoga Heights is in red, similar school districts based on the state of Ohio is in the blue, and then in the yellow you say here's the state. And right now it's just simply looking at 3rd grade math and English. There's a drop down here, and you can just pick anything you want. You want to pick 8th grade, here's how we are in 8th grade. You can see the red is higher than the blue and the yellow every single time. You want to go to high school, no matter what the test, the red is higher. That's us, okay? So again, another nice graphic. And then these are some of our 5-year trends, and then again, you can go through and look at some of those things. So going back to the presentation, And these are the tests that feed into that, starting in third grade. Actually starts in 3 weeks with the third grade English Language Arts test. It's the first test that registers every year. Yay. And let the games begin. Okay. So no, we were at 94.2%. We needed 90% to get 5 stars. All 3 buildings were also 5 stars, which means they were also above the 90% threshold. Okay, here's, again, this is the data I start collecting when the test results come in May, and I go through and I verify these in a secure data center in June and July, check any discrepancies. This is the number I had back at the end of July, and it held. So pretty happy with the processes that we use to verify our data. So again, how do we do comparatively of similar or districts of interest and those that border us? You can see we're number 38, Kirtland was 56, Independence 93. And then it goes from there. Again, how many questions did you get right? I have to say that I think, one of the factors that we don't think about with some of these urban school districts is whether the kid even showed up to school to take the test. If the student doesn't take the test, it still counts, but you get a 0. And that factors into your performance index. So it would be really interesting if they would do a performance index based on the kids who actually took the test and just have it as a report only, so you could say, okay, only 50% of our kids showed up to take the test, but of those 50%, our performance index would have been this, but this is what we have. That way it kind of informs a little bit more apples to apples with things.
As we got into proficiency testing, it was only tests taken, and then a couple schools were accused of not having all their kids take the test that should have taken the
Yep.
test. So,
Stay home this day,
yeah, so then,
please. Yeah. So did very well in comparison. We did a little bit deeper dive. This has the economic data. I did this for Cuyahoga County. You can see Solon was the highest in Cuyahoga County. Number 10 was Westlake, and there are other districts. We're number 8 with an Ohio median income. I got this from the CUP report that can be gotten right offline, so numbers are not made up. Our median income is $40,613 fiscal year 22. That's the lowest on the list. And our economically disadvantagement for that same year is almost double, if not, you can see for Chagrin Falls Exempted Village, we're talking about 600% more poverty in Cuyahoga Heights compared to Chagrin Falls. So that's something that we talk about a lot. Economically disadvantagement is not a disadvantage for our kids, because every kid that walks through this school is our kid. And that's what I was talking about the other night. It's not about a single year or a single team. It's about being part of something bigger than yourself, and it's about being part of the program. And every kid that comes here is welcome as part of the family, not just another number walking the hallways. And this data is indicative of that. And so this is our 5-year average. Mr. Martin showed this the other night. So you can see how we've done. It's consistent. It's going to take a lot of years before they catch us here, because they're not going to be finishing number 1, and we're not going to be finishing number 100. So progress is whether you met your potential. And then if you met your potential, how confident are they that your data was statistically significant? So that is value added, meeting your potential, and then effect size is how confident are we that your data, which exceeded state average, how confident are we that there was a statistically significantly higher than the state average? It's really complex. All you need to know is this. To get 4 stars, you have to exceed potential to move off of 3. So everybody starts with 3. If you fall short of potential, you move down to 2. If you're above potential, you move up to a 4. Then they look at your effect size. How much different are your results than that of the average across the state of Ohio? Okay, we were higher. We exceeded our growth, so we got 4 stars. But then they looked at our effect size, and our effect size was number 2 in the state of Ohio. So what that means is our growth was significantly higher than the average growth across the state of Ohio. so high that we move from 4 stars to 5 stars. That can also work against you on the other end. You can go from 2 stars to 1 star if there is a significant deficit between your growth and the state average. So it's even more complex than that because law says that starting last year, this has to start including up to 3 years worth of data. Well, we didn't have data from 2 years ago because that's the COVID year. 3 years ago, I should say. That's the COVID year. So right now, feeding into this is the 22-23 school year last year at 67% weighting. And then we've got the 21-22 school year at 33%. Next year, they're going to add a third year, and that will go 50%, 25-25. So it gets really complex because we're verifying data from multiple years. This is a nice representation. If you simply just go to the state report card and you look at progress, they give you a nice color code. So you can see, this is green? Colorblind guy here, so you got to help me. It's green? Okay. Green means that there was evidence that the district met student growth expectations. You can see we have none of this light blue color or aqua, I don't know what it is. And then you've got this darker color. We've got a lot of those, which means there's significant evidence that the district exceeded student growth expectations by a large magnitude. So we have a lot of that. Now, do we have some growth opportunities? Yeah, we have some growth opportunities right here and right here. We can get better. We can get better. And what's interesting is when you look at these, the kids are getting enough questions right to say that we've met the achievement standard, but they're not hitting the score they should hit. So kids are hitting a 705. All right, they were proficient, they've cleared the bar. But the kid was supposed to get a 725, not a 705.
Based on what? Like
Based on the test.
understanding of
So that's based on the testing history of this kids, which start with the 3rd grade
Right.
test.
that specific kid.
Yes. It goes down to the specific kid. A kid that's in the 50th percentile is only compared to other kids in the state of Ohio who are in the 50th percentile. There used to be this misunderstanding that if Matt Young were to play basketball and I were to go play against LeBron James, that Matt Young will never, ever meet the LeBron James standard. But we were looking at it wrong. I will never achieve like LeBron James, but where I start and where I end, my growth, simply by playing with LeBron, my growth will increase exponentially because I'm playing with one of the greatest players of all time. His growth is going to lag because he's playing with me. Okay? He will start to fall off of his potential. He may score 25 points a game, but now he starts fouling out every game as opposed to staying in the game and scoring 35 points a game. You know, so it gets really, really complex. So I try to explain it as simply as I can. A kid's testing history starts with the very first test they take in 3rd grade, and it starts to build from there. And what's interesting is we get projections that are going to come out here October 18th. And I break all that data down, give it to our teachers, and say, if our kids score as they're supposed to score based on their testing history, our performance index will be this. But we are always 25% on a 5-year average, 25% higher than that. And that's why we score so well in achievement and so well in growth, because our teachers know in October what our kids have to do in April and May. And they make it happen. And they make the adjustments. It really is surgical. As much as, Mr. Muccio is breaking down things with spreadsheets and is very detailed about every single penny, it's the same way with every single test score here. It's almost an obsession. So, yeah, this is really good stuff here because to achieve high and to also grow is really tough. And we talked about that last year. All four entities are 5 stars. In comparison, we had the highest of the comparison districts. We're at 28th. Independence is last in my comparison at 406. They were 3rd in achievement, but in this comparison, 3rd in achievement, but last in our comparison in growth, because they're not meeting their potential. That's simply the way to put it. They can pass the test, but they're not passing it with the scores that they should be passing with. And again, it's not a criticism. That's just that's the first thing I would start looking at if I were doing a professional development with folks. This is the effect size. You can see we're number 2. So how statistically significant was your growth compared to the average? Ours was so high, and this is a 2-year average, so we're number 2 using the 2-year data. Here we are over time. I mean, it's not even close. I tell our, we talk about this all the time, we use a football comparison. It's easier to go 0-10 than it is to go 10-0. It's easier to say I'm not going to give any effort and tank every game and lose them all than it is to go out and win every single game. And I feel like we're in a cycle right now where we're winning every game. And it's really should not be taken for granted. It's really hard to do, and you got to give the adults, the kids, the community, the board, everybody pulling the rope in the same direction. A lot of credit here. It shouldn't be taken for granted. Gap closing is looking at our subgroups. You must have 15 students in a subgroup in order to register. There's 75 possible points you can be evaluated against, but not every district has the 75 points because they have subgroups that don't add up to 15. And so for example, us, 43 points was all we were capable of potentially earning. That was our maximum score. We couldn't get to 75 because we don't have enough kids.
So we're not punished for that, like the
You're
tests,
not.
we're just-
All it means is those points that you do get, you better do well
Yeah.
because you don't have as big of a buffer, right? We got 35 out of a possible 43. You have to get at least 60% to get 5 stars of the max points you earn, and we're at 81.4. So we well blew past that. You'll see these are data points tied to the Every Student Succeeds Act that the state of Ohio submitted to the federal government for benchmarks for subgroups in achievement and in progress. Those numbers go up every year, all right, as part of the 10-year plan that was submitted. And you can see I think those are red dots. Yes? That's the minimum in order to meet the federal standard. And then you can see where we are. So there are 14 bars there. We exceeded all 14 bars. Students with disabilities, multiracial students, black students, white students, Hispanic students, economically disadvantaged students, all students. And that was for achievement. This is growth. All right, we have to hit +2 in order to meet the standard. We didn't have enough kids in, for example, some of these subgroups. Like you won't see an Hispanic subgroup here. You have to have 15 kids within the subgroup. This is math on this side. You can see all 3 subgroups blew past the +2. And you can see over here in language arts, there was only one group that blew past, and that was our students with disabilities. So I really applaud our intervention specialists and the regular ed teachers who co-teach with them, because this is proof that we own all kids. It's not your kids and your kids. These are our kids, and it's a collective effort. We do have some work to do here, not meeting our potential. I know the reason why. I'm not going to say it. I know the reason why. My teachers know the reason why, and we're going to fix it. And it has nothing to do with what's being taught. I can just say it. Our teachers suspect our kids aren't answering the writing prompts on the language arts test because they know to get a 700, they can get there by not answering any of the essays. So some of our kids in the older grades aren't writing the essays. And so we're getting automatic zeros, not because they couldn't do it, they are choosing not to. Not every kid, but a significant portion, it's dropping our numbers down. And so
Is this middle school or high school?
primarily high school. They know they have to get a 684 in order to meet the graduation standard. A 684 is limited. Or basic, sorry, it's basic. It's not a high bar. It's like getting a 40% on the test and you've met the graduation standard. And so it's like, they know what they have to do to get 684. They've gamified the system. Well, we have to have a conversation with some of our students about, this isn't about the team, this isn't about this year, this is about a program, it's about something bigger than yourself. You're not just impacting you, you're impacting all of us. And just making sure that they understand that, and they will, and they'll do great. I know it, so. Graduation were great. Chronic absenteeism was down from 18% last year. It's huge. Still not at the 4 and 3% that we were at one time, but that's okay. Our gifted rating, we did get 5 stars, and we met the value added piece. So those were value added. Performance index was fantastic. We were almost 99% of the maximal value in our gifted achievement. However, we did not meet the gifted identification services. It's a report only. It doesn't factor into the stars. In essence, we don't have enough students in our subgroup populations being served with gifted education. But if they don't exist, like if they're physically not here, it's hard to, but the state says it's either you get it or you don't. So it's not a, you don't have 15 kids for that one. It's, they want us to identify more students of minority and underserved populations for the gifted programming. So, but to do that, you got to hit scores on tests. So it's not as easy as wanting to. So how did we do? We already went through all these. 5 stars on everything. This is probably where Kirtland went a little bit ahead of us. When the overall, he said they were 24. They got us a little bit here, pretty significantly. 11 versus 37 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's pretty high up. And then in the early literacy, they were higher than we were. But we're at 37, and you can see kind of where we fall from there. And this is how well you're serving your subgroup populations. There's this data was not collected in 16-17. It didn't start until the 17-18 school year, so we just have a 4-year trend. And again, you can see where we are compared to Kirtland and Independence. Yes?
Just a quick question. Did anything stand out when we went from 57 to 3?
I'll tell you, I know exactly why that happened. The year before was the COVID year. We were in session, and we were remote. I think you remember I did a presentation. We were remote almost 50% of the school year. And our performance index was only around a 92 or a 93. Those scores fed into that average that goes into the kids' testing profile. So we had lower scores, which then dropped their profile, so to speak. And then the next year when we were back in person, we go up to 100. And now we're exceeding kids that were in the 70th percentile with COVID factored in. Now we're all of a sudden in the 85th percentile. And so it was a COVID factor that was in there.
And it looks like Independence went the other way. So if we went, lower, they went higher.
Yep.
At
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Graduation. If you recall last year, we were 4 stars as a district, 5 stars as a high school. You can have differences because some students belong to the district. They may be outplaced, for example, and they register with the school district, but they don't register for the high school because they're not being served at the specific high school. Anyways, we're up. Last year we were 4 and 5. This year we're 5 and 5, and our values are back. This year still has one student that I had mentioned that never attended here, but it was a Cuyahoga Falls student. They didn't want to claim the student as a dropout, so they stuck with us because we had no other means of appealing. What was interesting, and this has been added if you look at the bottom, so you look at the 5-year graduation rate, only 82.5% of the kids actually went to school here all 4 years. Whereas in the 4-year graduation rate, and this isn't last year, everything lags a year, so this is the class of 22 and a class of 21. So in the class of 21, 82.5% of the students went to school here 9, 10, 11, and 12. So almost 20% of the kids came here at some point in between. Whereas in the four-year graduating class, the class of 22, 91% of our kids were here all 4 years.
It's a metric that was pushed heavily for by the mid-sized urban districts throughout the state because they have so many transient kids, and their contention has always been, and they've kept data, the students that are with them for their entire educational cycle perform better, but some of the first ring districts that we're members with, students will be at 3 or 4 different high schools throughout the course of a year. They're just so transient. So that's where that arose from. And that's why they wanted that number on part of the report card.
Yeah, and we've talked about how significant every kid is here to us, not just as part of the family, but statistically speaking. I mean, we're 5 kids away from being in the top 40 or 50%. I mean, it's only 5 kids. You know, it's nothing. And it's just interesting. But here's how we shake out. We're third on the list there. Early literacy. So early literacy is made up of 3 components. Were the students proficient on the 3rd grade test? They get 2 shots out. To be proficient, they have to score 700. Okay? That's 40% of the total. Were the students then promoted to 4th grade? Did they meet the standards to be promoted to the 4th grade? That the state of Ohio gets either on the state test or an approved substitute test. And that's 35%. And then improving K through 3 literacy it's kind of complicated to explain, but when a student goes on a reading improvement monitoring plan at the beginning of the school year, are they still on that plan when they start the next school year? Or do they come off of that plan? And you get, it factors all that into this particular calculation and your goal. And we see some really heavy legislation with House Bill 33 that just came through and went into effect the other night, that essentially if a student is on a reading improvement monitoring plan, it's almost a special education initiative, even though it's not special education. The reading improvement monitoring plans have intensive monitoring that has to be done in interventions that have to be recorded, and it really is up in the ante on this. And we know that because the governor devoted, almost $90 million over the next 2 years to the science of reading, to training, and ensuring that kids, either are not falling below grade level, or if they are, they're getting some very intensive interventions and tutoring. There's also the dyslexia legislation that's running parallel to that as well. So we've got a lot of responsibility at our elementary level with respect to this. So when you take the 3 factors, we're at 75.6%. We're kind of right in the middle-ish range. I mean, we're at 3, which means we meet standards. There's not a large, again, every kid's significant. Here's not a large margin of error, because if kids start falling off, we could easily slide down to 2 stars. But likewise, we have a few kids start to significantly improve, we're up to 4 stars. So this is one that we're really working intensively at this. So this is how this is broken up. 3 stars. And this is where we were last year. And then here's how we shake out, kind of very similar to last year, where we're sitting there right in the top, 40% or so at 255. Nordonia is up at 74, and Cleveland is all the way down at 598. So Independence just ahead of us at 221. Brooklyn Schools, we're at 255. They're behind us at 458. So there's a big gap. You can see there's some jumps there. Really proud of my elementary teachers and everybody that's worked to make the shift, and I think we're going to see improvements in this indicator. We're almost done. The last metric, this is the college, career, military, and workforce readiness. This is right now in a report-only phase. Got a couple more years. The data that feeds into it's really complex to get. There is data in here, but it really doesn't have any meaning. Like they put a 59.4%. I don't know what that would equate to in stars because we don't have that yet. We don't have that information. But what they have is they've reported, okay, how many of your students participated in the ACT? All right, 2/3. We paid for it, but only 2/3 of the kids wanted to take it because we offered it on a Saturday. The SAT, we had, you can see we're 95.7. We offer that during the school day because the state pays for that. So the state pays for that, we pay for the ACT. But they don't factor, they're not going to factor into this calculation. The honors diploma does. Industry recognized credentials, so this comes mainly from kids that attend the Career Center, and are they getting those industry recognized credentials? You see there's some AP data here. Dual enrollment. Dual enrollment means that they're taking a college credit plus course that is for college credit and then for high school credit. And that can occur at the Career Center as well as here at Cuyahoga Heights. We offer 3 courses here in-house, so they can do it within our brick and mortar for those 3 classes, but a lot of them will go to Cleveland State. I say they go to. Some don't physically go to campus. They do online versions. But those are the agreements that we approve throughout the year, those MOUs with Cleveland State, Kent State, University of Akron, Lorraine County Community College, Tri-C, and et cetera. This is the remediation free score, so how many kids hit the acceptable threshold is set by Department of Higher Education on the ACT and SAT for certain subtests like reading, English, and mathematics. You got to put this into context. I think I talked about this last year. We were actually, I think we were a year ago, we were above independence on this. Like, I haven't done a deep dive into this, and I certainly could to see where we are. You say only 47.8, but that 47.8 is actually a really good number. But people don't think that. They're like, well, that's really far from 100%. Military enlistment and so on. So there are things that are going to feed into this that still don't have data yet because they're trying to figure out the easy way to collect the data. This is interesting. I mean, you can see students that enter within 2 years of college, we're at 72.9%. It's about where we've been. This year, I think I mentioned we have 40% of our juniors and seniors going to the Career Center. All right, so some of those students may go to a 2-year or a 4-year college, but many of them may go straight to the workforce right after high school. And that's great. We want them to be employable, but it's not going to show up. So again, you got to know your community. Is 70% of your kids going to college good? Yeah, it is good, because what we know is 90% of those kids persist. So once they decide to go, they stay. They might transfer, get homesick and end up closer to home, but they still stay in college. So these are just some interesting, like how many of our kids go to a 2-year, a 4-year, gainfully employed and things like that. So it's starting to populate, but it's not quite there. And that's it. I think we've got a lot to be proud of. And as certainly representatives of the community and leaders of the school district, I want to thank you for supporting what we do here, because I think our staff it's an above exceptional job. All right, significant. They're doing significant work. I mean, life-changing, changing trajectories of our kids, and that's what the report card doesn't define us. As I mentioned the other night, 73% of our kids participate in activities here, and that doesn't even count your clubs. That's just sports and then the marching band on Friday nights. It's just tremendous the well-rounded education our kids get. Should not be taken for granted. Any questions?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
We're going to let Mr. Young sneak out of here. His son's in the middle of a soccer game right now, so he's going to try to go over
Hoping
and
to make
catch
the second half.
the second half of the soccer game
Over
at
at Baldwin Wallace.
Wallace.
So thank you for your time.
So-
Very good. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
It's really good.
You wrote someone's doctoral dissertation there. Thank you. A lot of good news. So, Mr. Evans, I don't want to delay Mr. Young any further. No, please. This is actually probably better for Mr. Evans, but there's so much good information here. Is there been any conversations among the administrative team about ways to push this information out to the community? I understand we're doing it now in a timely sense, but I didn't know if there's a broader perspective in mind.
Yeah, we've talked about it, one of the difficulties with the situation we're in right now is trying to have a focused approach to what we're presenting, and not to,
Yeah.
because really, with some of the stuff, people will get to the third line and then they're just done.
Yeah.
Can I just make a little suggestion? Maybe in the Tom Talks every week, just find like one thing to highlight and say, this is from the latest state report card. If you wanna know more, go to this link. Like, say for example, our middle school is number 3 in the state of Ohio. That's gotta raise some eyebrows for people for interest, I mean, just a line, one line, boom, this came from this latest state report card. Did you know? Boom. If you wanna know more, here's the link.
And we're gonna send some stuff out with some links to, that, like direct links to the information, so people,
Good luck to your son. Thank you so much.
That's a great suggestion, yeah.
Yeah, I like that, Maria. It's a good idea.
I mean, just every week, just pick something.
Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah, so
I
much
mean,
here
there's
you could
so
go on
many
with,
different aspects, but, even if it's just the fact that we're 29th in the whole state of Ohio out of more than 600 schools, like even something like that, that's gonna get some attention from people, I think.
I've spoken to Mr. Hartman, with his, movie-making background. I'd like to start creating more videos that explain these things, kinda like we did with the literacy letter that maybe
Yeah.
went home to you.
Which I did not watch the video.
You probably didn't watch the video, but we put together a 15-minute video to explain why we sent this letter home
Yeah.
and what it all means. And I would like to start doing the same thing with a lot of this, just little personal snippets, and it makes it a little bit more personal. It
That's a
doesn't
good
take
idea.
much time at all.
And
Thank
even
you.
when we're out there explaining the levy to people, we can put, and by the way, did you know
It's all factual information.
that this is where our school stands? And that this should show to people that we are doing excellent work, our staff, our students, with the resources that we have.
I agree.
Good luck.
Okay.
Good luck to your son.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 6, Treasurer's Business, Mr. Muccio.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbins. A couple items tonight for recommendation. Items 6A, 7A through 7F in the consent agenda.
So may I have a motion to approve the Treasurer's consent agenda items, please?
So moved.
Mr. Sajaki moves, I'll second. Mr. Muccio.
6A are the minutes, 7A and B would be the financial statements as of July 31st and August 31st. 7C is the engagement letter from the Auditor of State's Office beginning the fiscal 2023 audit. 7D is the agreement with Medical Mutual of Ohio for the Health Savings Account Plan, the HSA plan. And I have noted that we approved September 20th the MOU establishing the HSA plan. 7E is a purchase order. We just have one recommendation from Scott Dietre, and that's the painting of the equipment band bus for $9,390.25. And then 7F is one new vendor, and that new vendor is the winning bid that's on Mr. Evans' side of the agenda tonight for the exterior stairwell project that we have. And I ask for those items for approval tonight.
Okay. So if there's any questions for Mr. Muccio, if not, let's move to a roll call vote. Mrs.
Yeah,
Evans?
I'm perplexed here with this item about the painting of the bus.
we can't use it as an equipment bus. It has, while it's painted orange. So for it to be an equipment bus, it cannot be orange, so it has to be painted. We're eventually gonna get wraps for it like you see other districts have band buses. So it's been stripped, it's been converted, but we can't use it until we paint it. We can't put it on the road, because under the current circumstances, it would have to pass an inspection from the state, and it can't pass the inspection with it gutted the way it is, so.
Well, I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue of how much this costs.
Oh, Mr. DeTrade, this was the cheapest of the, red paint was probably at $3,000 or $4,000 more to paint it red, and he contacted several different vendors to try to get it painted.
I don't know, it just seems like a hell of a lot of money to do this.
It's a big vehicle.
So it's a standard school bus?
Yes,
And because we want to use it to transport equipment instead of students, it can't be the color that it is.
Correct. It can't be kept as is to use it to transport the equipment.
Okay, like, who made that rule? 'Cause
That's
pretty stupid.
the Ohio Department, that's the Highway Patrol.
Okay, all right, so that we can't change. What I'm just saying is, I just find it crazy that it's that much money.
No, Mr. Dutray did his due diligence on trying to find vendors for this. And he'd done this project previously at Brecksville, where they converted a bus to an equipment bus that had very little resale value.
Yeah, and I noticed that it also talked about not only painting, but touching up the rust and everything else as well. And also I noted that there was some indication they were hoping that maybe someone else would help fund this, maybe the music boosters, but that didn't come through.
No.
All right, one more crazy thing, just throwing it out there. Did we ever entertain the idea of maybe making this a class project for someone at CVCC, at the Ohio?
Yes.
Yeah.
Auto?
We-
Scott did, he said that the bus could not fit in their bay.
Doesn't fit in their bay.
Dang, we are just missing out in every
They
way.
will, when we look to do the wraps and the kind of decorate it, they do those things at the Career Center as well, so we'll kind of incorporate some of that.
Okay. Does anybody else find it expensive, that it's $9,300 to paint a bus?
Wasn't there a
Well-
cost for the actual bus?
This is what, when we bought the 4 new buses, the trade-in value was almost nothing because of the number
Okay.
of schools that we're
Oh, so
buying.
this
But
isn't an old
we're
bus
buying,
that
this
we
is
got.
one of our buses that we took out of commission that we didn't trade in or we didn't try to resell. When all that grant money came through,
Yeah.
Right.
the bus companies knew that they were gonna get all this business from the state of Ohio, so the trade-in values were almost nothing.
And this is the best way to transport marching band equipment?
Marching band equipment has been one of the banes of my existence as an administrator here, because there's not enough space underneath the buses. The bus drivers will tell you that it's actually illegal to transport them on the buses. We used to have fights with some bus drivers when kids were bringing their instruments to school about bringing them on the bus. So, we looked at a trailer,
Yeah.
and I was actually, when John Sokol was here, I was looking at purchasing a trailer, but then we'd have to have a pickup truck to haul the trailer. When this kind of came about, Mr. Dutray had done this project previously at Brecksville, where they converted a bus that was no longer in their fleet, and this was kind of his idea, and I said, well, let's go with that. Because quite honestly, I couldn't have got a trailer that would have been the size that we needed for under $15,000 as I was shopping around for trailers.
And then, really, how often is this going to be used? Is this going to be used just for away football games?
And when they go to any kind of competition, yeah.
So I don't have a strong feeling on this, but I will say that in looking at the quotes, Mr. Dutray did obtain 2 quotes, and the one that is actually lower in the comments for this vendor that he's recommending, it says that the other vendor they had a lower quote, there have been, I guess, performance and project delays and communications problems with the prior vendor. So on that basis, I'm understanding that's why the higher bid is being proposed, but it is a $645 difference. And I would just point that out. So it appears that the $9,000 is within the range of of other estimates for this bus painting project. But as to the merits of it, that's what we're talking about.
And they also did disclose that someone on our staff is related to someone at this Tony's Auto World. Who's doing the job? Who would be doing the job? But,
Or is that a conflict? Does that create one of our conflicts?
I don't think it creates a conflict. I'm glad they disclosed it. Obviously, if they got only 2 bids and one of them is not complete, doesn't look like there's a lot of people like running to our door to do this job either.
Mhm.
So, I'm just bringing it out there because it was disclosed. I was more at the side of like, really, it costs this much money? But, just the paint alone is $2,800. It seems like crazy amount of money to me. I've never painted a vehicle before, so I really don't have any basis. I just on, you know, just looking at the quote, it just hit me as being expensive.
Well, are you comfortable going forward with this? If you're not, then we should pull it off and modify the motion. I'm not sure what
No,
where
I
to go
mean,
with this.
you know, I trust that everyone did their due diligence here. Again, I'm just saying, and like I said, I wondered if there was any other options, and apparently, you know, people were thinking the same thing I was, that maybe we could get this done a different way. But not this instance, so.
So, I understand your comments, I get it. So, do you want us to pull this off agenda, or, you know, you have other, you know, we can vote on this separately or decide it separately? Right now, it's on an agenda item, consent agenda, I'm sorry, what
I
would be your
understand.
preference?
I understand, that's fine, let's go forward.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions about this or any other item on a consent agenda? Hearing none, let's move to a roll call vote then.
Mr. Suchaki?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Press?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Mr. Muccio, discussion?
Yep, a couple items. 9A, the November 2023 five-year forecast. We have that set to be reviewed at our November 1st board meeting, work session, and then approval 2 weeks later at our November 15th board meeting. Still good with everybody? 9B, levy information that we're having every one of our board meetings. If anybody is interested in the breakdown, what the levy will cost, what the levy will fund, informational items there. 9C is new. This is a sample ballot from the Board of Elections. That's what it's going to look like. So when somebody goes to vote, this is the sample ballot that they'll see. And I reviewed it and had our legal counsel be an extra set of eyes to look it over. So. And when I called the Board of Elections, I inquired about the Spanish on there, and they said that they had sent that down to Columbus and had an interpreter verify that the Spanish was correct on there. So. Let's see, 9D. So 9D deals with our final expenditure reports, FERs. So we had a single audit that was performed in fiscal '22, probably going to have one in fiscal '23 and maybe fiscal '24. Just means that we've hit the threshold of spending over $750,000 in a fiscal year on federal awards. When we close out the grants, we have to do the FER, the final expenditure report, with the Ohio Department of Education. Those are due at the end of September, September 30th. So I finished our consolidated, which has 5 grants rolled up into one, which is Title I, Title II, Title IV, expanding opportunities for each child, and our IDEA grant. Then we also had our ESSER 2, our ESSER 3, our American Rescue Plan IDEA, that's special education, our American Rescue Plan Homeless Targeted Support Grant, and our school bus purchase program that we had. There's a lot there with the grants, so there's a lot. 9E, ESSER funding. I found this pretty interesting. Matt Young shared it with me. If we click on that link there that I have in the public section, it takes us to what he was showing us earlier. I just clicked on it and it's going. It's loading, data a little slow. So once it comes up, on the left-hand side, it's going to say ESSER funding. And if we click on that link for the ESSER funding, mine's going slow.
Oh, mine opened. Maybe.
Because we're all trying to get on it at the same time.
It's twirling.
But it's interesting if, you know, if you're at home and you click on it, you can see what our school and any other school has spent in regards to their ESSER funding. So I wanted to show, you know, our school as an example. Fairview Park, if you were to click on Fairview Park, they have not spent anything regarding ESSER 3 in the system. So it shows that. So they have a lot to catch up on in this fiscal year, fiscal '24.
This is the last year they can
Yeah.
spend it.
So we had about 600,000 for ESSER 3. We spent all of our ESSER 2, spent all of our ESSER 1. For ESSER 3, of our 600,000, we had already spent 400,000, which leaves about 200,000 left for fiscal '24, which we had planned for. So we'll finish that 200,000 in this fiscal year, so we'll spend 100% of it. But it's interesting to look at different schools. Maple Heights, Garfield Heights, some of those schools, they have like 15, Parma, they have like 15 million they have to spend. That's a large amount of ESSER 3. Some schools didn't even spend all of their ESSER 1 or ESSER 2, if you were to go look at it. I think Independence was one that they left some money on the table, I think for ESSER 1. I'm able to go in and look at it. So it's interesting just to see that, you know, where some of these schools kind of panned out. But we spent 100% of our ESSER 1,
As we should.
100% of our ESSER 2, and we will spend 100% of our ESSER 3. So, but, yeah, if anybody has extra time, it's really interesting to go and kind of look around them. Last point would be 9F, and this is our Suburban Health Consortium. So the fiscal year closed out for the consortium, and the treasurer from Orange Schools, Todd, is the fiscal agent. And, you know, I'll just be very frank with his assessment of the fiscal year. He goes, simply put, it was a second consecutive brutal year for Suburban Health Consortium financially. He goes on to say the cash burn for the consortium for plan year 2023 was in excess of 9.2 million. Revenue totaled nearly 109 million, while expenses totaled 118 million. The attached financials show the details. For plan year 2022, the cash burn totaled in excess of 8.8 million. Thus, Suburban Health Consortium has gone through 18 million in reserves over the last 2 plan years. Fortunately, SHC has a large cash reserve built up during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's the only reason Suburban Health Consortium could sustain the level of depletion of cash reserves. And he goes on to talk about, you know, if there's any question about the necessity of a 13% rate increase approved in August, here's your answer. Frankly, I hope the 13% increase is enough, but I make no promises that it is sufficient. We cannot sustain another cash burn of this magnitude. So there's a meeting coming up in October 16th, and I'm going to talk with some other area treasurers Friday just on the financial health of the consortium. Myself, Bay Village, Brecksville, Brunswick, Lakewood, North Royalton, Overland, Polaris Career Center. Anything that comes from that meeting, any recommendations, I'll update the board. But I do believe it would be a good idea to update the board on a monthly basis, similar to what we do with our financials, just on the financial status of Suburban Health, because it is now possible that the consortium can go below ORC 9.833, which is the viability of the consortium. So if we open that attachment there, the second page is going to be the financial, or third page, excuse me, is the financial spreadsheet that Todd puts together. And just want to point out kind of 2 areas. The top left-hand side, the beginning balance for October 2022, top left-hand number is 22,615,000. So that's where the consortium started their fiscal year, which starts October 1st. And if we look to the bottom right, we can see the 9.2 is the deficit that occurred, and it took the cash balance from the 22 that we were looking at to bottom right-hand side, 13.3. That ending balance row in last column, $13,358,439.63. So the consortium went from 22 to 13, deficit of $9 million. Now that viability is right below it. So it's 9,970,000. That's Ohio Revised Code 9.833. So once the consortium potentially dips under 9.9 million, it becomes a question on the viability or the health or sustainability of the consortium. That's now a concern, because we're actually at that point this fiscal year. I know the projections on the 13%, we're trying to get the consortium's cash from 13 million to about 18 million, along with paying all the claims. So they're hoping to pay all the claims and raise the cash from 13 to 18. We'll see what happens. But I'll keep the board updated every month as we go along.
What options do we have?
The school districts that are in the consortium are on that page.
Right.
So
There aren't a
Avon,
lot.
the CVCC, Cuyahoga Valley Career Center, is within the consortium. That's a partner of us here. So what options do we have? We could build up the consortium. It turns the page, gets better financially,
Do you
health-wise.
mean add more people? Or do you mean just improve the financial?
Just improve the
Okay.
financials. In my opinion, and I put it there are two issues. Number one is sound loss reserving principles, cash reserves. You have to have a sound loss policy or guideline that drives the goal for cash reserves. I pointed out to the consortium that their prior thought process on it is outdated. What I mean by that is they've been trying to hit a goal of 20 million and driving their rates to hit that 20 million. In their eyes, the 20 million represents 3 months worth of expenses. If expenses are about 7 million, 7 times 3, 21, 20 million, that's how you get to that mark. But it's not 7 million as far as monthly expenses go. If we look at that spreadsheet, we go down, the expenses are they're around 10 million. Some go over, some go under, but it's about 10 million. Well, if you take 10 million as the cash reserve times 3, you're at 30, not 20. That should be the goal for the consortium, to get cash reserves to 30. If the best practice, from what they're saying from the actuaries and people in insurance, say have 3 months cash reserves, that should be the goal. So that's number one, is the issue I see. Number two, it's a combination of post-pandemic healthcare catch-up and higher rates being charged by the providers. So paying more claims that are coming through, and higher prices by the insurance providers for those claims. So I think both those items are the issues that are affecting the consortium. If they bring in another school, that school could have even worse claims. So it could have an adverse effect if you bring a school. So you're looking at risk if you bring somebody into the group. If they're high risk, that's just going to hurt everybody else, because you kind of manage your risk in a consortium. So sometimes, you have a good year, somebody has a bad year, kind of evens out. That's why people join a consortium, kind of have that risk mitigating, try to allow for low risk, safe entities to go in. So.
One of the superintendents was in another district last year, and in his district, because not being part of a consortium, had a 25% increase in healthcare.
How many schools are in the consortium?
It's about 20.
So Mr. Muccio, we've been actively discussing and have actually adopted this HSA plan that bolts on to our coverage. Does that have any impact on this situation, this cash flow conversation, or it's not? Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanted to
it
make
should-
sure if it had an impact. or
Yeah, it
not.
shouldn't have any impact on
Okay.
cash report. But this is a concern. It's a concern enough that one of the treasurers had reached out and they want to talk Friday with us, about half the consortium. I think everybody recognizes, especially the email from Todd, treasurer at Orange City Schools, just how serious this issue is. And just being very frank here as the treasurer of the school district, I am concerned. I am deeply concerned about this. So I just wanted to, have that. It's one of my top priorities at this point in time, is just the viability of the health of our healthcare consortium. So,
Well, please keep us informed. I think your idea to keep us updated monthly is a good one.
that's all I have.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Muccio? Thank you, Mr. Muccio.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans, agenda item number 10.
Okay, I ask that under Superintendent's Business Employment, items A through C be approved, and under 11, 11A be approved via consent agenda.
So may I have a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda items?
So
moved.
Ms. Decker moves.
Yeah.
Mr. Chachak.
I'll take second.
Mr. Evans.
First one is moving Frank Domzalski, tradesman 2 to tradesman 1. I told during the agenda review, there's an argument that could be made that Frank probably could have been hired tradesman one. He brings a lot to the table, certifications, just the money that we saved in doing things in-house that used to be done out-of-house, outside before. The amended contract for Pam Mead, what started that was that with the MOU with Chase, she was cut out of uniforms because she was not included in that MOU. So we started to take a look at this. I had a discussion with her. I know that the pickup on the pickup had been an issue, so I brought that up. And so Pam, you'll see one of the things in that contract is a move, and that move is Mr. Muccio calculated out what her pickup on the pickup was, and so we pulled that out and made the adjustment via salary for her in their steps on the salary schedule. So we just kind of brought hers up current. Didn't change the dates on it, still expires 25, but just kind of modified it. So again, she's entitled to uniforms, her professional organizations, the two that she's required to be a member of for us as a district, and then the pickup on the pickup as well.
Mr. Evans, my understanding is that even after this proposed adjustment, if the board approves it, that Ms. Mead's contract would still be consistent with her peers, roughly speaking?
This is a difficult one because they classify in the salary studies, because of the size of districts, there's a lot of people have a lot of different names on them, and Pam does a multitask type thing, so she's probably a little bit below her peers in the county, quite honestly. I'll get a more accurate look at that when this year's salary.
Even after this proposed adjustment, if the board approves it?
She's closer.
Okay.
She's a little bit
That gets her
closer,
of
yeah.
course. Okay, all right, thank you. That's good to know, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's fine. And then Luke Hopkins, Elena Scotton, our intervention specialist, she's involved in 2 leadership activities this year. She got some great opportunities through the ESC. Luke did his student teaching here last year, did an outstanding job for us, so Luke's going to help us out by subbing in those special ed areas. And quite honestly, Luke chose to, he could have graduated last year from Baldwin Wallace, and had he, we probably would have looked to hire Luke full-time. He did such a great job here with our kids. He decided he's going to stay another year because he got another year eligibility left for wrestling. So he qualified for nationals last year. So he's actually he put off graduation for a year, so he'll be able to still sub for us. He's got his license, and we're going to go from there. Luke did just a tremendous job with our special needs kids last year. And the exterior wall, thanks to Matt Muccio for this, kind of spearheading that. We only had 2 bids. We had to throw one out that didn't complete the bid process. This gentleman that won the bid is actually doing some work. He has his crews. They're doing some work down the street. So he thought as long as he had his crews in the area, he might try to pick up some work here at Cuyahoga Heights. Matt worked also with Jason at GPD and our district attorneys to make sure everything was kind of up and up with the way that the bid was accepted, and that we could move forward even after throwing the other bid out because it was incomplete. So.
Okay, and I see that we previously had retained GPD to act as that.
Yes.
Owner's representative,
Yes.
basically to be the manager
Yeah,
of the
yep.
project. So neither you nor Mr. Muccio have to get your overalls on and go out and
I'll be out there staring at him. I'll be out there watching, but it's better to have a more experienced eye
Got it.
to look at what exactly is being done out there.
Is there a timetable for this?
They're going to start on it ASAP, and quite honestly, it shouldn't be a disruption on class, so they can work. This is not one of those things where they have to wait till school's out of session, because the work's outside here on the wall and in the pool area, and we kind of want it done, but before we start using the.
We're not using this area when we have games or anything, right?
The gate's open.
They
but-
can go down
Yeah,
those
they can
steps
go down the steps, but
regardless?
there won't be any interference with that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. If there's no other questions or comments from Mr. Evans?
Pool's opening October 20-something. That's
Correct.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
If there's anything else, if not, let's
Take
move
a
to a
turn.
roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Stecca?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Kraus?
Aye.
Mr. Downs?
Aye, the motion passes 5-0. Moving on to agenda item 13, Mr. Evans.
A couple things. Mr. Muccio was approached by another firm wanting to look at talk to us about the billboard, electronic billboard. So he and I are gonna meet with them, just to see what their level of interest, that'll be, Lamar owns currently, and then this is another firm. Lamar's kind of the biggest in the country, so I'll be a little curious as to what this group's gonna come in. The first group that we sat down with, really, there was nothing of interest from that group for us. They were kind of looking to, they thought we might have a cash flow issue going on, and they were looking to, kind of thinking they were gonna bail us out of something. That's not the case at all. It's because they really came in at a low price, and we said, oh, we're just not interested. So we're in the last year of that. If you notice some equipment down by the hill, we've got, there's some gas wells on the side of the hill that I believe were non-functional. I was told they're non-functional, but the company that owns the wells is got to get in and do some work on them somehow. So if you see some equipment going up and down the hill, that's what that is. I saw that they had some stuff parked out there. The gas wells, quite honestly, are buried in foliage right now. They're all overgrown down there, and we're not responsible for any kind of maintenance on that, but it's my understanding that they've been not functional for years. I'm not certain what kind of work's gonna be done down there, though, so. Because back when we were looking at alternatives, I said, well, what about it, they said, no, so many per se in those, we're not drawing anything at the current time anyhow, so. Lastly, I just got back from BASA. The governor spoke to us. It's kind of ironic, the day after he said he's following the TRO, but he's not. He's just going to ignore it. So the Department of Education and Welfare. But there'll be some changes coming. There's 67 Republican members of the House right now, but the problem is they're split into two groups. So essentially, there's 3 caucuses in the House. The Republicans have 2 completely separate caucuses because they couldn't agree upon a leader, and then there's the Democrats. So they actually had a super majority in the House, and they still flex their muscles on a lot of issues, but there's apparently there's no coming together of these 2 groups, from what our legislative liaison says. 3 of the 22 Republicans are term limited. 1 has resigned. It's anticipated that 18 members are going to face primary challenges this spring. So, again, they have the supermajority. Speaker Stevens and President Huffman are expected to try to become the Speaker of the House. That'll be interesting, because that may just exacerbate the issue, because they are, while they're both Republicans, they are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Senator Huffman has not been a friend of public education whatsoever. The Ohio Department of Education and Workforce is functioning. They're still doing it, and the reason that the governor said that he had to continue because they need to continue to send checks and what have you. Aaron Roush spoke to us at a finance meeting 2 weeks ago, and for all intents and purposes, it really wasn't going to change anything that was going on with the finance part of the department. I had if you've ever talked to Bill Phillips, there are no short discussions with Bill Phillips. So Bill cornered me down at BASA, and we talked for probably 45 minutes. And quite honestly, the litigation against the state, as far as the vouchers are concerned, they've won every battle that they've gotten in front of at this point. But it's just taken a lot longer than he expected. But Bill's very confident, and that we're going to proceed with that. You heard a lot, you were talking about the 20 mil floor. The 41 counties right now that are under the reappraisal, it's 172 school districts in those counties that are at the 20 mil floor. So some of the property tax legislation is incredibly confusing right now. I think there's no less than 5 bills out there. 2 of them focus on trying to average the last 3 years instead of it, but that can, as you heard, that can work in a couple different directions. Actually, the one that BASA is going to support is a proposal put forth by the Auditors Association in the state, and what that would do is there's a caveat in there for, I'm trying to find the exact language, for if it would freeze, House Bill 263 freezes property taxes for homeowners who are 70 or older, make less than $70,000 annually, have lived in their home for at least 10 years, and have a home value of less than $1 million. So that's some relief for senior citizens. And as educators, we know that we're certainly in support of that. And it would subsidize the schools, one of two ways, through the rainy day fund or a possible, with that tax freeze, but it would cost between $20 and $50 million annually. And it would mean going in, there was kind of a source of funding for that, and quite honestly, $20 to $50 million, state budget-wise, is kind of a drop in the bucket for them.
What are you saying with that, that if they would freeze the property taxes for those individuals
Right,
that qualified?
right.
But then the schools would still be made whole?
Made whole, right, by the
Okay.
state. So that's what the,
That'd be great.
that's what BAS is really advocating for. The fear is that we're getting towards the end of session here at the end of the year, and there's gonna be, and the legislature tends to make a real bad decision real quickly at the end of sessions. That's where some of
Like
the.
non-decisions.
That's where some of the, you know, the schools that were put on academic watch, and that's when some of that legislation was kind of rushed through. So they tend to get a little haphazard at the end. You know, we're just kind of asking them to slow down and take a look at everything appropriately before they move forward on some things. So there's a lot going on right now. HB 133 had, or House Bill 33, the budget had about 140 bullet points that affect education, and so the state budget bill. So that's, there's a lot of, and Matt talked a lot about it today, some of the dyslexia and some of the reading budget parts that have gone on to it. Matt has certainly seen it with the influx of grants, and the governor has made it perfectly clear that he is gonna continue to promote grants versus base funding for schools. And that.
Everyone's gonna have to compete.
Right,
for
and,
those
you know,
grant
and we've done a
monies.
good job of it.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, we've made sure that we've certainly got our share, and like I say, with the buses, it worked out a little bit better for us, because some people didn't use that money to buy buses, and that's okay. With the safety grant money, same thing. We were eligible for a second time around, we took it, so we'll continue to explore all those possibilities. That's why I told on Monday night that, that's how you can make that levy in 2012 last 11 years, is the fact that these last few years, the ESSER grant and ESSER money and all that money has really helps to kind of extend those things out, and we'll continue to look for opportunities to do that, so.
Good.
Productive couple days. It was ironic that Mr. Muccio was talking a little bit. I sat in on a seminar that was looking at some alternatives with healthcare insurance, and there didn't seem to be nothing that was kind of jumping off the screen saying, pick me, we can help you save some money. So districts in the state are aware of it, so. That's it. Oh, Monday night, I thought Monday night went over well. I was curious I talked to Laura on my way down to Columbus. I thought that the feedback, I got a couple questions via email, people thanking us for doing that we had presented some information they were unaware of, and so we kind of garnered some votes that way, that they assured us. One family was leaving to head out of state, said, we're gonna vote by absentee ballot, so thank you for providing the information. There was a lot of good stuff there. I think that, some of Mr. Martin's information I'd like to get, he's a little bit bashful about doing this, but I wanna get him in front of our staff and talk to both staff, high school, middle school, and elementary, about some of the information he presented. He loves to bring that stuff into me, and I love it, and Matt loves it, and he lives for numbers, but I think it's important that our staff see some of the data that he collected and what have you, so.
His presentation was very good.
Yeah.
Are you speaking to Valley View Council this month, or have you done?
I was supposed to, I got moved because it was Stan Durbin's wake,
Yes,
so, and then the other meeting was last night, and I was in Columbus for BASA, so I talked to Mayor Jerry. He gave me some questions. I said, well, next time I can get there, I'm gonna get there, so I will be there whenever their next scheduled meeting is. Cuyahoga Heights Senior Citizens, those are the only two groups I haven't seen yet.
Okay, and then, another opportunity, we have a captive audience is our seniors dinner,
Yes,
so we have plans to do that.
well,
I don't know,
I've asked the levy committee if they would help with that, so I
Yeah.
would
right,
turn that kind of over to them, and I would certainly field any kind of questions that they want fielded
Yeah.
there. But I will have hit all three senior citizens groups from the villages at that point in time. I've already seen Brooklyn Heights and Valley View seniors, and Cuyahoga Heights is in the next week or so.
But that would be an excellent opportunity for someone to do an abbreviated presentation of the state report card.
The key is abbreviated.
Yeah, abbreviated.
And
I mean, you literally, it could be, read this page.
Yeah, well, I think that's,
And maybe
if we can get something in a one-page, kind of colorful thing that maybe Matt can go over, that would be.
I mean, I really, I know I've said it a couple of times already tonight, but I think this is really key, that this kind of information needs to get out.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but sometimes there's too much information, and
Right.
and I think sometimes people believe that we're trying to confuse them by giving them so much information. So what I've talked about with Margaret and Charlene is I want to find some of the best points and hyper focus on those best points.
Yeah.
Just keep hammering them home. I think the number rankings is one of those best points to kind of hammer home. So if we could keep things, the kind of bullet points in one page, and just that we are crushing it academically. We are crushing it co-curricular wise with our student participation
Exactly.
rates. We are, our music, there's just so many, and we're hitting on all 8 cylinders, and and it just try to be focused and let people know. And then the other part of that is, what have we done with the money, and have we been good stewards of the money?
Exactly.
And,
That would go back to Mr. Muccios and the teams having spent all of the grant funds that we received.
I mean, I think too, maybe there maybe needs to be some highlight of the fact that, this money doesn't just come easily from the state. And we have people in our staff that work very, very hard to get us considered for the money. And then when we get granted the money, look, the ways we spend it. We make good choices on how that money's spent. We put it forth where it's best needed. And the way Mr. Muccio just said, we spent it, we spent our ESSER 1, we spent our ESSER 2, we spent a portion of our ESSER 3, and we know what we're gonna spend the rest of that $200,000 on,
and one of the things that I don't even know how to get this out, Reno Conapelli I talked to, and Reno was a board member when we passed the last levy, and Reno said, Tom, he goes, I don't know if you remember that, we promised 3 years out of that last levy. You guys got 11 years out of a levy that when we looked at with the TPP phase out and everything that was going on, that as a board, we said that we can guarantee 3, we don't know what we can guarantee beyond that. We got 11 years out of that levy, almost 4 times what they had initially projected at that time for that levy to be. So, I think that speaks to everybody kind of pulling in the same direction financially around here.
Anything else, Mr. Evans?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much, very informative. So we're gonna move on to agenda item 14, this is the board items. And so we actually have 2 items, 14A, which is a motion to approve policy 0141.2, which is revised conflict of interest policy. And then secondly, Mr. Suchaki had suggested a motion to approve attendance by any board member at any of the, is it the ESCs?
Yes.
ESCs, board leadership training meetings that are coming up. So those are the 2 motions. I'll make them, and can I have a second, please?
Second?
Mr. Suchaki seconds. Is there any discussion beyond what we've already talked about? If not, let's move to a vote.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item 16, board discussion comments. Anyone have discussions, comments? Future,
Nothing.
okay, future agenda items? I don't have anything this evening. I will note that the next meeting, Mr. Evans, is at the senior citizens meal?
Yes,
Precedes that meeting?
yes,
And then that'll be the last meeting before the Capitol Conference.
correct.
Okay. Agenda information, it should be noted the Board of Education members received their agendas several days prior to the actual meeting, thus they've had considerable opportunity to study and ask questions, et cetera. Upcoming regular meetings, Wednesday, October 18th at 7 PM, Wednesday, November 1st at 6 PM, and Wednesday, November 15th at 7 PM. And with that, I'm going to
So
make...
Mark, the November 1st meeting is before capital
Yes, you're right,
conference.
I'm sorry, I did make a mistake. I
And then the 15th is the day after capital conference.
Duly noted, and you are correct, I misstated that, sorry. So with that, I'm going to move that the board adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC Section 121.22G1 for the purpose of considering the evaluation, employment, and/or compensation of employee or employees or officials of the school district. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Ms. Decker seconds. Let's move to a roll call vote.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye.
Ms. Press?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. It's 8:28 PM, and we are adjourned to executive session. No action will be taken afterwards. Thank you.